The Florida Panthers have won 7 of their last 8 games, and they are in a dogfight for first place in the Atlantic Division. Aarmando Velez of Locked On Florida Panthers is here to talk about what to expect down the stretch and at the trade deadline. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. It is great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Florida Panthers. Of course, I'm talking about the Mondo man, Aarmando Velez. And Aarmando, red hot Florida Panthers team right now. What has been the big reason for this lengthy, it's not a winning streak exactly, but what, 7 out of 8?
Yeah, it's all about keeping the pucks out of the back of the net. The Florida Panthers, in their last 13 games, 2 goals or less, consistently giving themselves a chance to win. And it helps with the Florida Panthers that late game situations that you have Sergei Bobrovsky and Anthony Stolarz back there that helps them whenever it gets late, tight situations with the Florida Panthers, you know, they went on that run after December 23rd and all, but it's really been for them the stretch going into the All-Star break and after that for me that of what has stood out, because in the first 47 games the Panthers have only gone past regulation 6 times. In the last 11 they've gone past regulation 4 times. So now that they've created some separation, they're now getting challenges as well from other teams. So they're getting everyone's best. And the standard has also changed in South Florida as well with the winning for the Panthers, because in the last 3 games, 2-1-0 in those, the games in which Paul Maurice was satisfied, the only one was the one that the Florida Panthers lost against the Carolina Hurricanes, which a goal was scored with 20 seconds left. And then the game against Ottawa, not really satisfied with their game after blowing a 2-goal lead, and then 2 unanswered against the Washington Capitals after taking 1-0 lead, where the Florida Panthers ended up winning that in overtime as well. So it's kind of a little bit of a standard change for the Florida Panthers as well in the last few years of this franchise for the Panthers. And I mean, they're coming off an 11-game road winning streak that just ended Thursday night. Top penalty kill on the road. Anthony Stolarz has the best GAA of goalies on the road as well this season. They're getting it on all fronts. And even though Sam Reinhart is on a 6-game goalless streak, he is on fire on the power play and on the PK as well. Him and Barkov play heavy minutes there for the Florida Panthers. So it's just been a contribution. And also Matthew Tkachuk, leading point getter since the calendar flipped to January 1st.
Are you at all concerned about Sergei Bobrovsky being overused before the playoffs? He has started 42 games already compared to only 16 starts for Stolarz. When it gets to be, April, May, maybe even June, are you concerned that he may not have enough gas left in the tank?
It's hard to compare last year, Sergei Bobrovsky, to this year, because Bob had 2 stints where he was out of the lineup. Early January, where lower body injury, Alex Lyon comes in prior to the All-Star break. The Panthers were limping. And then in late March, non-COVID illness, the Florida Panthers go on their 6-game winning streak and then magic happened in Pittsburgh on that night as well, with the Penguins losing that helped the Panthers get into the playoffs. But thank you, Alex Lyon. But this time around, I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky, he is a man who is all about his routine. First guy in, last guy out. And Paul Maurice also spoke about it as well for the goaltending in like him liking his rhythm and based on the days off and the differences in the schedule as well, because the Panthers have had a scheduling luxury this season. All of their West Coast trips have ended in the beginning of January as well, and only play one game outside of the Eastern time zone the rest of the season on March 12th against the Dallas Stars. They have quite 5 matinees left in the regular season as well, so you can treat some of those as 2.5 days off as well for that too. And also the 3 remaining back-to-backs for the Panthers in the season, the best team, the team with the better record and better roster on paper, they're all on the front end of a back-to-back as well for the remainder of the season too. And with how Stolarz is playing, you could put him between the pipes. You have that trust factor in him to get those starts. And with only one 4-day gap for the rest of the season, you could maybe use that as a way to give Bob a full week off as well, somewhere in there. Don't know what kind of order it will be, but Paul Maurice says that he will get his good fair share of starts and get his breaks without even feeling it.
All right. Wanted to ask you about, I mean, there are so many talented players on this team, and you mentioned Bobrovsky and Sam Reinhart and Matthew Tkachuk. How about Gustav Forsling? Here is a guy in 57 games. He is a plus 40. That is almost double the plus minus of Alexander Barkov, who is next on the team with 22.
Yeah, Gustav Forsling is a guy who plays in all situations. I know plus minus is an even strength stat, but excuse me, but Gustav Forsling is just him and Aaron Ekblad, especially just because look at Aaron Ekblad's plus minus. He missed the first 16 games of the season, and his plus minus has already caught up to Alexander Barkov. Yeah, I know defensemen play more minutes and all, but still, the fact that that pair has been able to be responsible in their own zone, battle for the puck in the corners, and more importantly, they're able to break the puck out of their own zone quickly, protect the middle of the ice, which the Panthers, that's really their bread and butter, protecting that middle of the ice and the shot suppression for the opposition as well, of suppressing shots as for the Cats. So that's been really helpful for that pair of Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad. And man, Aaron Ekblad has also been healthy this season since coming back from that injury as well. And Gustav Forsling, just like Sam Reinhart, he's in a contract year too. So that's a big factor in his performance. And the Panthers getting him off of waivers from Carolina just over 3 years ago, he's everything that the Panthers wish they could have had from him.
Trade deadline is a little more than 2 weeks away. What do you expect the Panthers to look to do, and what, if anything, are they willing to give up to get it?
I don't think they're going to go for someone with term. There's been the Riley Smith rumor, former Panther, who did not leave on the best terms with the fan base for the Panthers, but that was a time where there was still a little bit of purgatory for the Cats as well. Prior to all that too, the just bad culture for 25 plus years of the Florida Panthers and all. But that's regardless of the point. It's all when it comes to that. It's if you separate and you show that you've changed, you could come back together and all that stuff. But but he has term, so the chances of him being traded to the Florida Panthers is highly unlikely. Same thing with Pavel Buchnevich as well. The Panthers have been in on Noah Hannafin, but I don't know how the money is going to look like. And the top 2 guys that you look at in the pool for the Panthers, as far as skaters, is Mackie Samoskevich, who's developing well in the AHL, and someone who's no longer waivers exempt in Anton Lundell, who played a year in Liga before signing his ELC the year after he was drafted, and has had that pro experience. And he is the first guy for the Panthers when it's not if, it's when Barkov or Bennett get hurt, that he is the first guy to go into that top 6. So the flexibility of that, and also he can play wing too. It's big for the flexibility of the forward lines. So when it comes to possible middle 6, bottom 6 depth that the Panthers could get, maybe someone like an Anthony Mantha, if the price is right for the Panthers in this one. That's someone that I look at for the Cats in that when it comes to adding depth. Adam Henrique, maybe that's also one, but what's going to be the asking price for the Anaheim Ducks? Because the Panthers don't have a first round pick until 2026. So they could do something of a third round pick in this year and a fourth round pick in another year. Spread them out so you can still have your contending window, bring guys in, and still develop guys, because this is the window that this is what Bill Zito did when he decided to go all in back in 2022 when they did win the President's Trophy. Now, you had to slow down a little bit when it comes to buying. I still think the Panthers are going to be a buyer, but it's going to be smart with what they do when it comes to buying.
All right, Aarmando, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
They can follow me personally on X at MondoMan12. You can catch everything when it comes to the Florida Panthers, not only for Locked On Panthers, but I'm also writing for the Hockey News Florida at the Hockey News Florida. The hockeynews.com/Florida. You can catch my work and David Dwork's work as well there. And also you can catch the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And you can follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers.
All right, Aarmando, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you as always, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. We're past the halfway point in the season, hockey fans, but regardless of where your team is in the current standings, I want to remind you that you can win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like McDavid, Crosby, or McKinnon will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, hockey fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.